The bridge between us. In a small coastal town called Windmere, where the sea kissed the cliffs and the morning fog carried the scent of salt and stories, lived a quiet bookshop owner named Alara. She inherited the little shop, the Reading Lantern, from her grandfather. The store was tucked into a cobbled corner near the old stone bridge, a place where tourists rarely wandered and the locals whispered memories. Alara's life was peaceful but predictable, each day a routine of opening the shop, arranging books by genre and season, sipping her black coffee while rereading more novels. She had grown used to the quiet loneliness, believing love was something that happened in novels, not real life. That was until one rainy Thursday morning in September. The doorbell chimed softly, and in stepped a man soaked in rain, his dark hair dripping and a travel-worn journal clutched in his hand. "Do you have any books about bridges?" he asked, his voice calm and warm despite the weather. Alara blinked. "Architectural bridges or metaphorical ones?" He smiled. "Both, I suppose." His name was Julian Hayes, an architect traveling across the country documenting historic bridges for a personal project. He had arrived in Windmere to study the town's ancient stone bridge, the very one just outside her window. What he didn't expect was to meet someone who would change the way he saw connection. Alara and Julian grew closer day by day. He returned to the shop every morning, claiming to need more references, but staying longer each time, talking with Alara about art, travel, love, and the small magic in ordinary things. She showed him her grandfather's old maps of Windmere, the forgotten corners of town, and even read to him from her favorite love poems when the rain wouldn't stop. One evening, as golden dusk bathed the streets, Julian invited Alara to walk the old bridge with him. "I've crossed hundreds," he said, "but none felt like this one. Maybe it's because this is the first time I don't want to get to the other side too fast." She laughed, but her heart fluttered. "Maybe you're finally where you're supposed to be." Over time, they became inseparable. Julian turned his bridge project into a book, dedicating it not only to the bridges that connect land, but the invisible ones that connect people. And when winter fell and snow turned Windmere white and still, he asked her to meet him once more, at the center of the bridge, under the falling snow. "Alara," he said, holding her cold hands, "I crossed half the country looking for stories of connection. And I found you. Will you build the rest of this life with me?" Tears glistened in her eyes. "Only if we promise never to stop reading stories together." They married in spring, beneath cherry blossoms by the bridge. The bookshop stayed open, filled with laughter, warmth, and new stories they wrote side by side. And so, the bridge and Windmere no longer just connected two pieces of land, it held the story of a woman who believed love only lived in books, and the man who proved her wrong. The wind that brought you. In the quiet town of Halewood, where time seemed to slow and the trees whispered to each other in the breeze, there lived a young woman named Elena. She was a librarian, the kind who loved rainy days and the scent of old pages. Her world was calm, predictable, wrapped in the warmth of silence and solitude. Every morning, she walked the cobblestone path to the library, passing the same ivy-covered walls and sleepy cafes. Life was soft, but empty, like a song missing its final verse. That was until the wind brought Aiden. It was early autumn when he arrived, a writer from the city who had inherited his grandfather's house at the edge of town. He was a stranger with tired eyes and a notebook always tucked in his coat pocket. He came into the library one rainy afternoon, asking for books about love, grief, and healing. Their first conversation was simple, barely a paragraph in the story of their lives. But something in his voice, or maybe the sadness behind his smile, stayed with her. Days turned into weeks. Aidan became a regular at the library, often sitting by the window, scribbling thoughts into his notebook. Elena found herself looking forward to the sound of the door chime when he entered, and how he'd always greet her with a nod and a quiet morning. One evening, as the rain tapped gently on the windows, Aidan asked her, "Do you believe people can find each other again, even if they've been lost before?" Elena looked at him, heart unsure but eyes steady. "Yes. Maybe not in the same way, but love has a way of coming back. Sometimes in someone else." That night, he walked her home beneath a shared umbrella. Neither of them said much. But silence had never felt so full. Winter came. The town was dusted and white, and the world grew quiet. Aidan started bringing her coffee in the mornings, and she left books on his porch with handwritten notes tucked between the pages. Slowly, their days began to write themselves around each other. He told her about the novel he was working on, about a man who lost the woman he loved and found her again, years later, in a dream. Elena smiled and said, "Maybe it's not a dream. Maybe it's a memory returning." She had her own story too. A childhood marked by quiet loneliness and a heart that learned too early how to hide. But with Aidan, she felt seen. Known. As if someone had finally read every chapter of her life and still wanted to stay. Spring melted the snow, and with it, the last of their fears. One day, under the cherry blossoms that lined the park, Aidan held her hand and said, "I didn't just come here to escape the city. I came here to find you." And she, with tears in her eyes, replied, "Maybe the wind that brought you was the same one I've been waiting for." They stood there, in the pink haze of falling petals, not as two strangers, but as two stories finally becoming one. When the stars whispered. In a quiet coastal town named Windmere, where the waves kissed the cliffs each morning and the sky seemed to stretch endlessly into forever, lived a girl named Elara. She was a librarian, quiet, thoughtful, and gentle as the breeze that rustled through the town's old sycamores. Her world was books, silence, and the soft scent of salt and parchment. One autumn morning, as golden leaves danced through the streets, a stranger walked into the library. His name was Callum. A travel photographer with kind eyes and a camera slung around his neck, he was in Windmere only for a short time, to capture its cliffs, its skies, its soul. He asked for books about constellations. Elara, surprised and curious, led him to the astronomy section. They talked, for hours. He told her about the stars he'd photographed from deserts, mountains, and frozen tundras. She told him about the myths hidden in the constellations and the poets who once believed the stars could speak. Each day after that, he returned. Sometimes for books, sometimes with photographs to show her. They began meeting at the edge of the cliffs at dusk, where the sea met the sky, and where silence held meaning. He would show her stars through his lens, she would read him stories beneath their glow. As the days grew colder, their bond grew warmer. Callum found in Elara a stillness he hadn't known he needed. And Elara found in Callum a spark that stirred her quiet world. But time, like the tide, is never still. His final day arrived. They sat under the stars, neither speaking. The ocean roared beneath them, a wild symphony to their quiet ache. I don't want to go, he whispered, his fingers brushing hers. Then don't, she said, her voice almost lost in the wind. I have to, he replied. But I'll come back. If you'll wait for me. Alara smiled sadly. I'll be here. With the stars. He kissed her beneath Orion's belt and promised to return in spring. Winter came with silence. Letters followed, from snowy peaks and desert moons, each one filled with longing and photos of stars that looked just a little lonelier without her. Alara kept them all in a box beneath her bed, her heart holding tightly to his every word. Spring bloomed. And on the first day of April, just as the daffodils opened to the sun, Callum walked into the library again, tanned, tired, but smiling. She didn't say a word. She just ran to him. That night, under the same stars where they first fell in love, he asked her to travel with him, to write stories about the skies while he captured them. And she said yes. Now, in photo books and libraries across the world, you'll find their name, Alara and Callum, on every page where stars are whispered about. They never stopped chasing the sky. But no matter where they went, Windmere remained in their hearts, the place where love first found them, in the quiet between waves and words.